Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. My name is Natalia Moczulska and this is the news. The 37th day of war in Ukraine has passed. Today, Russia's aggression against Ukraine turned out to be the most difficult for the oblasts Kharkiv, Chernihiv, Luhansk, and Donetsk. The Russian forces are mainly focused on the offensive operation in the east of the country. Ukrainian troops have liberated 30 towns so far.
Last night in Kiev was very quiet. However, the president of Ukraine warns that the Russians may resume attacks at any moment. In the east, the situation remains extremely difficult. Russian troops are moving to Donbass and towards Kharkiv. They're preparing new attacks. We're organizing more and more active defenses. The Russians fired on the Dnipropetrovsk and Poltava regions. According to the Ukrainian side, the Russians damaged more than 150 residential buildings and about 70 educational institutions since the beginning of the war. Russian propaganda continues to pretend that Moscow is not waging any war at all. I'm not sure if Ukraine, like many other small states, should retain its sovereignty after our special operation. In today's world, sovereignty is based, as we like it, on force. The Ukrainians have reported that missile attacks were also conducted from the annexed Crimea. From the Crimea, the invaders fired 3 Iskander rockets and hit a settlement in the Odessa region. Many people were injured as a result of the shelling. Yesterday, there was an attack in Russia. The fuel depot in Belgorod was fired upon. The Ukrainian side does not admit to this attack. Some specialists believe that this may be a Russian provocation aimed at escalating aggression. In the territory of the Białogard People's Republic, they understand that explosions that took place today could happen at any time in Russia. The hacking group Anonymous is continuing its offensive against Moscow. This time, their target was the Orthodox Church, which cooperates with the criminal regime. Hackers exposed 15 gigabytes of data stolen from the Orthodox wing of the Russian Orthodox Church and posted an estimated 57,500 emails via websites. Today, 7 new humanitarian corridors are planned to be open, through which the inhabitants of the Luhansk, Donetsk, and Zaporizhia oblasts are to be evacuated. The action to free the inhabitants of the destroyed Mariupol is still ongoing. There wasn't enough space. There were too many children, too many old people, just too many people. So even a decision was made to take people to the rear. It's not allowed, but everyone wanted to run away. So many people were left out because there wasn't even enough space for people to sit in the back of the truck. The Western press claims that only full support from Euro-Atlantic states can help Ukraine save its independence. For Ukraine to win the war, the West must provide it with more weapons and impose stricter sanctions on Russia. Considering the stakes, both for Ukraine and the West, the refusal of NATO countries would indicate a shameful collapse of the strategic vision. Today, the Ukrainian Prosecutor General's office said that more than 150 children have been killed and about 200 injured since the invasion began. As announced by the European Commissioner for Economic Affairs, Paolo Gentiloni, the European community is preparing further sanctions against Russia. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki is constantly calling for the assets of Russian oligarchs cooperating with Vladimir Putin to be seized.
More than a month has passed since Russia began its invasion of Ukraine. The 60-kilometer column of Russian military vehicles headed for Kiev does not exist. The situation is slowly normalizing. Schools and universities have started operating in the Ukrainian capital since Monday, and the curfew has been shortened. Telewizja Republika's Michał Trześniewski was reporting from Kiev.
Speaking to reporters in Vienna, Austria, following his trip to Russia and Ukraine, Grossi said the IAEA had been able to agree separately with Russia and with Ukraine on how the agency will be able to assist. The IAEA said on Thursday that the agency had been informed by Ukraine that Russian forces, which had been in control of the Chernobyl plant, were leaving the facility and had transferred control of the plant to Ukrainian personnel.
What's happening there has never happened before. So many things that may be disconnected or out of service because of a number of reasons, interruption of power or physical damage, maybe have never happened before. And we can provide them with advice, compare. It's not that they need us to do their job. They do know how to do their job, but this doesn't mean that there is not a lot of international assistance and cooperation ongoing, and in this case, in particular.
Grossi said the IAEA was still unable to confirm reports that Russian forces were contaminated with radiation at the Chernobyl plant. He added that the general radiation level around the plant was quite normal. Ukrainian authorities said Russian forces had been in control of the plant since February 24th. The Chernobyl plant, some 110 kilometers north of the Ukrainian capital of Kiev, suffered one of the worst nuclear accidents in human history on April 26, 1986.
And finally, U.S. President Joe Biden announced the largest oil reserve release plan in history. Russia's invasion of Ukraine had tremendous economic effects in many countries. Biden's plan is designed to prevent oil prices from pushing forward and help achieve energy independence.
Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison is expected to call a general election within days and has been eager to secure the trade deal before campaigning begins, having been in negotiations with India for a decade. The Australia-India Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement was signed in a virtual ceremony by Trade Minister Dan Tehan and India's Minister of Commerce and Industry Piyush Goyal, and both countries would continue to work towards full free trade deal, the federal government said on Friday.
We are opening the biggest door of one of the biggest economies in the world in India. Now, the Indian economy is worth billions and billions and billions all around the world. And there are many countries who want to do more business with India. But it's actually Australia that has been able to secure, and the agreement that we've been able to reach.
Morrison and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi tuned in to the virtual ceremony. Morrison's government is seeking to diversify export markets and reduce Australia's dependence on its biggest trading partner, China, after diplomatic spats led to Beijing sanctioning certain Australian products. The deal with India removes tariffs on more than 85% of Australian goods exports to India, worth Australian $12.6 billion, rising to almost 91% over 10 years.
And so it would have been foolish of a government not to have realised the gains and the progress that have been made.
And finally, the Smolensk catastrophe of April 10, 2010, has never disappeared as a topic of discussion among Poles. At a time of reset between the West and Putin, Europe believed in an accidental plane crash that killed the president, ministers, and military commanders. Today, such an accident is hard to believe, and the evidence confirms a deliberate act.
Welcoming, hospitality, and faith in the footsteps of St. Paul are the themes of Pope Francis's 36th apostolic journey. During the first day of his visit in the Mediterranean island, the Pope met with the President of the Republic, George William Vella, and the Prime Minister, Robert Abella, before moving in the afternoon by catamaran to Gozo, the second largest island in the Maltese archipelago. In an address to Maltese officials, the Pope made clear his attitude to the supposed military operation in Ukraine and called it a war. From the east of Europe, from the land of the sunrise, the dark shadows of war have now spread. We have thought that invasions of other countries, savage street fighting, and atomic threats were grim memories of a distant past. However, the icy winds of war, which bring only death, destruction, and hatred in their wake, have swept down powerfully upon the lives of many people and upon the days of us all. Earlier, Francis said he was considering a trip to the Ukrainian capital, Kiev. Asked by a reporter on the plane taking him from Rome to Malta if he was considering an invitation made by Ukrainian political and religious authorities, the Pope answered, "Yes, it's on the table." He gave no further details. Tomorrow, the Pope will celebrate Mass at the Piazzale dei Grania in Floriana and recite the Angelus at the end. While in the afternoon, Francis will meet a group of refugees at the John XXIII Peace Lab Center for Migrants in Halfar and deliver a speech.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please stay tuned for Poland Daily Weather, Poland Daily Business, and other programs. But for me, it's have a great weekend.